Hey friends, welcome back to Views from the Basement. I'm Mr. Wilson. So today I'm going to be reviewing the first season of Star Wars new show Ahsoka. So the entirety of this show is now behind us, and this show is getting a ton of praise. Why? Did I watch the same show as everybody else? Because it didn't do nearly as much for me as it appeared to do for everybody else. Now, that being said, I did go into the show with a fair bit of cautious optimism. I genuinely wanted this show to be great. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars. But at the end of every episode, when those credits started rolling, just more and more, I was just feeling like,
I have a really bad feeling about this.
and really this comes down to three big things that brought the show down for me. And that was, I didn't think the villains were great. And on the flip side of that, I didn't think the protagonists were really enjoyable. And lastly, but maybe most importantly, I really did not like what they are doing with the mythology of the Force in this show. So let's dig in a little deeper here. Right off the bat, I did not enjoy the dynamic that was between Ahsoka and Sabine. I just felt the dialogue alone was weak, off putting, really. And Sabine's character, I feel, did not translate well from the animated show Rebels into this live action show. At least, not as well as some of the other characters like Hera and, well, Chopper. In the show Rebels, I thought Sabine was just much more fun. She was more enjoyable. She seemed to have a lot more confidence. And in Ahsoka, Sabine's character, she was so whiny. And frankly, I just found her irritating through almost the entire show. And similarly with Ahsoka, I thought that character was more enjoyable in the animated shows like Clone Wars and Rebels. I just thought she was more enjoyable. In the live action here, I thought she just came off like this pompous ass. She's supposed to be Sabine's master, and she just has this weird superiority complex, like she's some kind of shitty substitute teacher. And as I just mentioned, I did think Hera's transition into live action did go a little better than Sabine's and Ahsoka's. However, her character just got wrapped up in this awful plot thread with the New Republic and just brought down in crappy, cliched politics that I wish they just would have found a better way to. It just seemed like her character had this crappy segue into a C3PO cameo, which, well, didn't do anything for me. I don't know why it would for anybody else, but apparently some people enjoyed that a bunch. And where was Zeb? I know they mentioned, what he was doing off screen, but I don't know. I thought it would have been nice to at least see him make a little cameo in the show. I think I would have enjoyed that more than seeing 3PO show up. Now, on the flip side of that, the villains. Oh, man, they let me down. Now, Ray Stevenson's Balin's Skull, he was really the only villain I thought in the show that was even decent. But, his character was nothing special. He was the easiest to watch, and I would say that mostly has to do with Mr. Ray Stevenson just making something out of nothing. So, tip of the hat to him for doing what he could with what he had. But his apprentice, Shin, has to be one of the most forgettable dark side force users that I even remember seeing.
I got a bad feeling about this.
I guess maybe I just expected a little more out of someone that had the training that she did. In this show, she had at least three direct conflicts with Sabine throughout the course of the show. And I couldn't wrap my head around how she wasn't just completely destroying Sabine. Now, I know in their first conflict, she did stab Sabine with the lightsaber. But I don't think that takes away from my point. This is a character who has been, according to the show anyway, very well trained in the Jedi arts. going up against Sabine, who, especially early in the show, does not know shit about the Force. I mean, their scuffles should not have even been as competitive as they were. I mean, when it got to the last one, when Shin was sent in to kind of take on all three of them, I couldn't help but think, well, you struggled against her one on one. I mean, what are you going to do now? You're not even going to have a chance. I could not buy into that. Couldn't do it. And then probably most disappointing for me was the Night Sister. I mentioned in a previous video how I'm a big fan of their mythology. Night Sisters of Dathomir. There's some very cool stuff there. And this character just also ended up being super forgettable. A complete disservice to the Night Sisters, but guess it is what it is. In the second half of the show, we finally do get to meet Thrawn, and for the most part, I was pleased with his representation here. He was very much the kind of stoic, charismatic, calculating schemer that I was hoping that he would be. It felt like it was a little too little, too late for me at that point in the show. I was already broken, I think. But also as a villain, Thrawn, he's not going to do it for everybody. He's not real physically imposing. He's a schemer. And as villains go, that's not everybody's cup of tea. I did enjoy seeing Hayden Christensen return to play Anakin. However, his whole sequence was involved in kind of the third point I made about the mythology of the Force, which I'll kind of go into here a little more. So he's in the sequence where Ahsoka ends up in this world between worlds, which is something that Ezra was in Rebels, and I am not a fan of this. This world between worlds, and you're seeing all these portals into different places in time. It just time travel and stuff like that is not something that Star Wars needs to be dipping its toes in. It's already a very slippery slope, and I mean Star Wars is having enough trouble as it is without trying to put even more on its plate. And also Anakin's character, the effects there, not real great. I mean, the de-aging stuff just still isn't where we need it to be. But I want to know, like, why did they even have to do the de-aging stuff with him in that world between worlds? Like, why couldn't they just have him look a little aged? I mean, he's a Force ghost at this point, so is it so bad that he just kind of looks as is? I don't think it would have taken anything away from it. But the real big one that I got a problem with here is this show makes the claim early on that anybody can use the Force.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
That is a big can of worms, better left not opened. But clearly they're starting to crack it open and take a peek inside. And I am just not a fan of this concept. Personally, I think it just pisses on the idea of the Jedi and their importance in the Star Wars universe. And lastly, we see at the end of the show, Balin's character is standing on this big statue, which is representing one of the Mortis gods. And again, this is another Force mythology thing that I am not okay with. If you're familiar with Clone Wars, that is where we see the Mortis gods, who are these three beings who apparently represent the living embodiment of the Force, and it is the Father, the Daughter, and the Son, respectively representing balance, the good side, and the dark side of the Force. And I mean, is the Force just not a cool enough concept on its own? Now we need to start bringing all these other things into it. These three gods of the Force. It just does not do it for me. It's so out there now. I mean, I like these were concepts that were developed in the animated shows like Clone Wars and Rebels, and I was just kind of hoping that they would leave them be there and just move on without them because I do not like where it goes with those thoughts and those ideas. But they are reigniting it here in the show Ahsoka, and again, I am not okay with it. So all that being said, it wasn't all bad for me. Visually, I did think it was a very good looking show. There was some really cool visual and sound effects in it throughout. In particular, the visuals and the sound design on that giant hyperdrive ring blasting off. That was a particular standout for me. I thought it looked and sounded awesome. So kudos to the VFX team on that. Also, one of those early planets they landed on that had all the red forestry. Was a big fan of just the ambiance that that created with all the red leaves and kind of the overcast sky. I found it very striking and very pleasing to my eyeballs. I also thought the space whales, the Purgles, I think they call them, uh, they did look real good, at least for the most part. I was kind of wondering if, like, how they were going to pull that off. You know, it's one thing to do it in animation, but in live action here, and they did do it justice. I thought they looked very good. And a couple other nice touches that I liked. You know, one was going back to Anakin. Even though I did not like his sequence with the world between worlds, I did like the little things they had there with like the flashes of Darth Vader's silhouette around him. That was pretty cool looking. That was a nice touch there. And also, as I mentioned in another video, the stuff with the lightsabers and the sound design and how the different sabers kind of have their own unique hums and buzzes and stuff like that. Just being a big Star Wars nerd, I like stuff like that, and I thought this show did a good job satisfying that nerdy itch. So again, I did think it was a visually impressive show. So I guess I kind of expect that though from Star Wars. It's kind of one of the hallmarks of the series is you know, a, a spectacle to look at, and I thought this show held up in that regard. And finally, at the back end of the show, we see how everything plays out with Sabine and Ahsoka now kind of swapping places with Ezra, and they are now stuck in this other galaxy. I'm sure this is setting up another season, or potentially maybe it's going to end up being one of the upcoming Star Wars movies that's been announced. Now, unfortunately, at least for me, this first season of the show really hasn't done much other than kind of dampen my excitement to see what they do with Ahsoka and Sabine from here. But being a huge Star Wars fan, I mean, I will be watching. There ain't no getting around it. I just kind of hope that they can elevate their game a little bit. So, as a standalone season for the show Ahsoka here, Views from the Basement, we'll be giving it 2 out of 5 stars. And hey, if you guys enjoyed what you've seen here, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Don't be afraid to leave a comment down there. Perhaps you think I'm full of shit with my points of view on this. Anyway, that's all I got for today, guys. I'm out of here.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Nerdy itch. Hmm.